There's a brand new clip-on saxophone microphone available on the market, and this one is made by perhaps the world's most renowned microphone company. That's right, Neumann, whose microphones are widely considered the benchmark for professional-grade, high-quality studio recordings, is now making a clip-on saxophone mic. Naturally, I was very excited to get my hands on this new mic, and I'm going to test it out for you today on alto, tenor, and soprano saxophones. I'd like to thank Sweetwater for sponsoring this video. More on them in a bit. Now, for me, it's hard to evaluate any microphone without having something else to compare it to, so I've recorded the Neumann MCM mic alongside my DPA 4099, which is the microphone I've been using for live performances for several years now, and I'm very familiar with. At the end, I'll let you know if I'll be sticking with the DPA or if I'll be bringing the Neumann with me to gigs from now on. I've already used it in about half a dozen live shows to put it through the paces, and I can tell you it does perform very well in real-world situations. The best way to get a sense of the sound of any microphone is to test it out in a controlled environment like my studio. I'm recording both of these through my Universal Audio Apollo Twin, and here's a look at the console settings. I put a high-pass filter on both mics, and the input levels are identical. I tried to position them as closely as possible in each configuration. Now you'll notice I have the mics positioned over the bell, but pointing towards the keys of the saxophone. This time I'll play the exact same thing, but I'm going to point the mic directly into the bell. Listen carefully and let us know which mic placement you prefer the sound of. The difference between these two mic positions is really apparent, especially when you're playing in the lower register and the bell keys. I much prefer the sound with the mics pointing toward the keys. It's much more even across the range as far as volume, and the sound comes across much more naturally. It's less harsh and aggressive. When we get to the soprano test, I'm going to show you the way I position the microphone on that instrument. It's not the most commonly used option, but I think it gets a better result. I want to point out that the DPA does get more signal from the same sound source. So I did boost the Neumann 3.6 decibels in post to even out the volume for your ears. Now let's listen to the same thing on a tenor saxophone with the microphones in the position facing the keys. And now with the mics pointing into the bell. And again, I do prefer the sound with the microphones pointing towards the keys for the same reasons as on the alto. Listening carefully, it is clear to me that the Neumann is definitely picking up significantly more key noise than the DPA does. Now, in a live situation, unless you're playing solo saxophone with no other instruments, that key noise is not really going to be a factor. When you're playing live with a band, you're not going to hear that key noise with all of the sounds of the other instruments in the mix. But I do have to say that even though the DPA microphone mount is sometimes a little bit fiddly, it's definitely doing a better job at reducing the noise of the keys. On the other hand, the Neumann bell mount is super solid and much easier to adjust. I really like how the clip rotates and locks into place at 45-degree angles, and the gooseneck is super sturdy. Both mics stay in place very well, even if you're moving around a lot. The Neumann MCM and the DPA 4099 are very comparably priced and both excellent options for anyone wanting to get a professional level clip-on microphone for their on-stage performances. I order all of my music gear from Sweetwater, and I put links in the description to both microphones so you can check current prices, read user reviews, and get all the necessary specs about frequency, response patterns, noise ratios, and all that other technical stuff. Sweetwater really is the ultimate online music store, and I love the fact that I can call them up and get an expert on the phone in case I have a question about any of their products. Just about everything I use to make these recordings can be found on Sweetwater, from the microphones, cables, and audio interface to the saxophones, reeds, and mouthpieces. I was playing the BetterSax EAS 112 Alto and the BetterSax burn-in mouthpieces on alto and tenor. The soprano mouthpiece was a Jody Jazz Custom Dark. Everything I used is linked in the description. If you haven't yet shopped on Sweetwater for your woodwind and brass gear, you definitely want to check out the way they do things. Fast, free shipping, amazing customer service, extended warranties included, and they even offer financing for large purchases. Not to mention all the sales, the giveaways, and the used gear they offer. Whenever I'm trying to decide what product to buy, I go over to sweetwater.com where I can do some hardcore research. When it comes to the sound, I find that both of these microphones give a very natural saxophone sound. The DPA is an industry standard for acoustic instruments. I know lots of violin, guitar, and upright bass players that use them because of the natural sound. I hear the DPA is adding a little bit of brightness and maybe some higher frequencies to the sound, while the Neumann sounds more neutral to my ears, perhaps even more natural sounding. Here it just comes down to personal preference. Some people might prefer that added brightness in the sound, while others will prefer the more neutral sound. The sound engineer is going to be messing with the EQ anyway, so it doesn't really matter much in the end. I will say that I do really like the sound of both of these microphones on all the saxophones. Now let's have a listen to these microphones on a soprano saxophone. First, I'm going to record with the configuration of the mics pointing directly into the bell. This is how Kenny G mics his soprano saxophone. Now here's an alternative mic placement option where you turn the mic around completely and have it point at the keys of your right hand. Now, since the goosenecks of these two mics are not the same length, I couldn't get them to be pointing in exactly the same spot, and I think that accounts for the greater difference in sound between the examples on soprano. Overall, I find that it sounds much better to have the microphone pointed at the right-hand keys on soprano than miking directly in the bell. The sound is a lot more even, mellow, and natural this way. However, one small drawback is that the mics are both picking up even more key noise, especially the Neumann. Again, in everyday use situations, that key noise is not going to be a factor since you won't hear it with all the other musicians playing. Another thing to note is that you get less signal in this configuration, so you might have to turn up the gain a bit. One major advantage the Neumann has over the DPA is that the connector is a mini jack, which means it's compatible with any wireless system. The DPA uses a microdot connection, which means if you want to use it with a wireless system, you're going to have to shell out an additional $100 or so to get this adapter. As far as build quality goes, both mics are very solid, but the Neumann, as you might expect, is seriously heavy duty. It actually weighs significantly more than the DPA does. Both microphones come with nice cases. The Neumann comes with a removable windscreen, while the DPA windscreen can't be removed, not that you'd really want to anyway. These are both condenser microphones that need phantom power in order to work. Having used both of these on stage and now having done a detailed recording comparison, it's actually a really tough choice for me which one I prefer. I'm going to give a slight edge to the Neumann since the build quality is more solid. It comes with that mini jack connector for connecting to wireless systems, and the gooseneck is a bit longer and easier to position. I wasn't aware before doing this recording comparison of how much more key noise the Neumann picked up compared to the DPA, but that's something I'm willing to live with. I also prefer the sound I get with it. It feels extraordinarily true to the actual sound that's coming out of my saxophones acoustically. Please let me know your thoughts in the comments. And now you should go watch this video where I compare 3 compact wireless microphone systems.